Are you looking for inspiration, peace, and a deeper connection with your soul? If you're ready to investigate your higher truth, take a deeper look inside, and discover a better way to live, stay tuned for Higher Soul Living, where we ignite your divine intelligence for life. With me, Reverend Christine Hart-Savage. I experienced a profound spiritual awakening that was so life-changing. It took me into a 30-year career as a metaphysical life coach and breathwork expert. I've mentored thousands of people through their personal challenges, anxiety, self-doubt, and search for meaning. Higher Soul Living is about choosing to live the higher way. It's about taking conscious ownership and drawing spiritual intelligence into your everyday life. Join me on a search for higher truth to find hope, connection, and happiness. The Higher Soul Living Show starts now. Hello, everyone. Reverend Christine Hart-Savage here. And having a funny morning this morning. Everything's a bit disheveled. But anyway, we're off and running. You know, I moved house about 12 months ago and I had so many books. I love books. I had a huge, wall to ceiling sort of bookcase in my old house. And I had to clear a whole lot of books. I think we had 15 crates of books that I gave to charity and gave to some friends. But when I was doing that, what I noticed is how many books, and I've kept a lot of these, how many books I have on the subject of life after death. And that is something that has always called me, always fascinated me. I was lucky enough to work with Dolores Cannon before she died. I think Dolores died in 2014. And her gift to the world and her studies and research have been absolutely amazing. So I did some work with her many years ago and still love her work. And I've read, I think, every one of her books, something like 17 books that she wrote. And I have so many books, like Raymond Moody books on life after death. There's life between life. There's so many books that fascinate me. So this interest, and I think it's something that's quite, it's poignant to all of us, life after death. Do our loved ones still exist? Do they still exist when they pass on? That's today's subject. Do they still exist? I'm a bit deaf today. I went to the doctors to have my ears syringed because I was getting on a plane. I am getting on a plane, and I've got funny, very small ear canals. And anyway, I've been deaf since they've done them. So I'm going back today. So I obviously still have a blockage in mainly my left ear. So I'm sounding very distorted to myself, but I hope I sound very clear to you. So today's subject, life after death. The Western world has these really mixed ideas about life after death. I've found working with people over the last 30 odd years that some people are very definite that you live and then you die, and that is it. It is final. And others do believe in life after death. So there's this really mixed group of people, or this mixed type of belief patterns that we have around life and death. So, a lot of people are more open to there being another realm or dimension of some kind, a dimension where we still exist on some level, where we still have conscious awareness. So I'm asking you now, what are your beliefs? What do you think about life after death? Have you thought about it before? Have you got like a conditioned thinking maybe from your family that yes, it does exist, or no, it definitely doesn't? But what are your beliefs? What are your thoughts, your feelings on this subject? I've had experiences of, I'm going to call them spirit or non-embodied beings, but I'm going to call it spirit. Some people call this type of thing ghosts, but I don't use that word only because a lot of people have a thing around that word. There's a lot attached to it, mainly from movies, I think, and perhaps different books. So I call it spirit. So I've had a lot of experiences in my life around spirit, off and on. And I'll tell you my very first memory, which is not a lot to it, but it's my very first memory of having a spirit friend. And then we will get on to the subject in its juicy form. So, my first memory of spirit is Julie. So, when I was very young, and I think I was about 4 years of age, and Julie would have been about the same. I had this little friend, spirit friend. Julie and I played together a lot, and she was called by my parents my imaginary friend. But even now, I know she was not imaginary, to me anyway. So even when I was older, my parents still referred to her. Remember when you had that imaginary friend when you were young? But I still have imaginary friends. I actually don't recall this particular event. My father told me about it. I do recall Julie. I recall her very well, but not this particular event. But I think it's quite interesting and funny in a way. My father told me about it. So one day I was playing with Julie in our lounge room, and my father came into the room and he sat down on the couch. And my father told me that I became extremely upset and he didn't know why. So when he asked me later why I was so upset, I told him that he sat down on the couch on top of Julie. That's why I was upset. So Julie was my very first memory of spirit. And there's been many, many, many connections since then. One of the things that people ask me is it scary? It's so not scary. It's not scary at all. Not at all. These are just people, souls that have passed over. They're no different to you and I. And I think where the problem comes in is movies often represent this paranormal event, if I can call it that, as scary. But in my personal experience, that is not the case at all. In fact, it's quite the opposite. And I must say, I don't profess to be an authority on life and death because I'm not. But I've certainly had some interesting experiences over the years. So, what I'm expressing in my podcast are just my views and my experience on the subject. So, I'm going to share with you now some of my clients' experiences. And these are interesting. So, I'm hoping to get through 3 of these. And if I have time at the end, I'll share one of mine as well, my personal ones, which is a little bit funny. So the first one we're going to speak about is Tara. So Tara came to see me about some challenges she was having. She was a young woman and she was completely and utterly overwhelmed by life. She was stressed and anxious, and she was experiencing a lot of grief and loss. Her husband had just passed away recently, so she was really in trauma. And she had 2 young daughters under 10 years of age. And she was desperately trying to get her life into order. She had to work out her finances and look at her life direction. But at the time I saw her, she was just completely overwhelmed. She was also worried about her children and wanted to make good decisions for her 2 daughters and was trying to keep them safe from the incredible emotion that the whole family were feeling. So she needed some clarity and direction on how to handle and negotiate what she was going through. It was pretty tough stuff. And she was trying to picture her future without her husband. And that's really difficult because it just wasn't happening. She was also trying to understand what the meaning was of her husband dying. She didn't understand why he would have to go at such a young age. So life was not easy for her at the time. And as you can imagine, Tara was very, very emotional during her session. And I could feel, see, sense, whatever you'd like to call this, the presence of a man with her during her session. So I worked with Tara to get her vibration. Now, this is how it works. This is where I use breath work in lots of different areas, not just the area of life after death, by the way. We can use it to clear the mind, balance the emotions, get the physical body into a beautiful, relaxed, very peaceful state, become aligned in spirit, and in our thought processes, our emotions, our physical body. So those four all lined up so that we get clear and light begins to flow within us. That is the whole way breath work works, because our breath is absolutely linked to energy and spirit. So with this particular type of client where someone has died, we really want to get their vibration high enough. In fact, it's with all clients really, but that's how we work with this particular area. So I really wanted to get Tara's vibration nice and high and hope she'd be able to connect with this visiting spirit, this man that was here. So after some time, Tara began to cry again. And I asked her what was happening. And she told me in between sobs, my husband's here. So bang, I knew she had got her vibration high enough during the breathing, which is fantastic. Then we have connection. I told her she could communicate with him any way she chooses. And Tara communicated all right. She communicated for a long time with her husband. He spoke to her about the girls and how to handle the situation. He spoke to her about their finances and what to do with that, where to put them, what to take it out of, how to actually organize the finances. He told her it was his time to leave. He had to leave. It was an agreement. And now she had to negotiate these things because that was part of her soul agreement too. And he told her that she would be all right. So she got to discuss many, many things with her husband on this level. So even though, and it was an interesting thing, even though the normal time period for a session was up, I didn't interrupt Tara. I didn't like to interrupt her and her husband's connection and discussion. And the session took over 3 hours. By memory, I think it was about 3.5 hours. And what I find is that life is interesting. It provides the time and space when we need it. Because normally I would have someone straight after the session, within 15 minutes to 30 minutes. And I didn't have anyone after Tara, which was very unusual. So I do believe that the space we need is created for the situation. Tara was in so much gratitude for what she'd experienced with her husband. She'd gained a lot of insight into her life and the answers to the questions that she had. She felt more peaceful. She also knew her husband was okay. She knew he was okay where he was. So that was a great sense of relief and a great sense of peace for Tara. Now, the next time I saw her for a session, I said to her, try not to have expectations about your husband visiting. Because what happens when we have a session like that and there's a visitation, we come back into the next session expecting the same thing. And that's not always the case. There are spiritual laws around what is allowed and what is not allowed. So I didn't know whether her husband would be permitted to actually come through in the next session. So she said that she'd try not to have any expectations, but of course she did. She told me later that she certainly did. As soon as she was breathing, she was willing her husband to come in. The first session was so enormous and the connection was quite extraordinary, really strong. A lot of the information was given in that session. And Tara said that it was as if they were sitting together in their lounge room and just speaking, speaking, speaking. Excuse my croaky voice. I've still got this tail end of this voice from the flu. But of course, Tara did come into each session with her expectations, and her husband visited every single time she came, but he wasn't permitted that same kind of communication. He was permitted to be there, and just support her, be with her, but not to that level of communication. He told her he'd always be with her, but he couldn't communicate with her in the same way anymore. So that's Tara's experience. I saw her a couple of years later in the street, actually, and she said to me that those sessions completely changed her life. And she felt so incredibly peaceful. She got new insights. She got herself a part-time job. She looked after, well, she still does look after her children, but her children would be in their teens now. And she's found her way. But what a devastating thing to go through for a young woman. And that connection to that person, that spirit, that life after death, whether we believe in it or not, sometimes it happens for people when they just do not even know about it, which takes me into my next client, Daphne. So Daphne had heard me on the radio and she said that she was immediately drawn to my voice. So she looked me up and booked in for a session. She lived quite a long way away, so it was a big drive for her sessions. So when she arrived, Daphne told me that she had also lost her husband about 6 months earlier. And now these sessions weren't one after the other, they were quite a distance between them. But she'd also lost her husband. And seeing as we're doing life after death, I thought I'd bring a lot of these sessions together to share with you. And she had 4 children, 3 girls and a boy. The youngest child was 18 and living at home, and another child was having some mental illness issues, which were really challenging for my client. And she was coming home, then leaving again, and coming home and leaving again. So Daphne was supporting both of the 2 younger children, the one still living at home and the young daughter with some mental illness. She was supporting both of these children, and the other 2 children were responsible for themselves. They're a very close family, and they had many close friends around them. So that was really great. But another big issue for Daphne was her husband ran a very large business, and she was left with this business. And she had never run a business like this. And she found that she was being controlled by some of the senior managers in the business because she really didn't know much about it, about how to run a business, of course. She had been bringing up her children and working part-time. She was also being manipulated by some other businesses that were renting the space and some equipment from their business. So it was a very male dominated type of industry, and she felt completely overwhelmed. There were loans to the business too, and she had a lot of learning to do. It was a bit of a mess. And Daphne's a very kind and generous soul. She puts others before herself a lot, and she didn't have very good boundaries, to tell you the truth. And some of the men working in the business were taking advantage of her kindness, her innocence, and they were really pushing her around. So we tackled one thing at a time, and Daphne stepped up beautifully. She stepped into her power in a really great way. She set new boundaries. She asked questions. She learned what she needed to know. It's like she really found her voice and she dug deep inside to find the courage she needed to make those new decisions and arrangements with some challenging people and situations. So I coached her through all of that, and she became very strong, balanced, and clear in her communications with the staff. She made excellent decisions along the way. She was doing very well. Then, during one of her sessions, she started to cry softly. By the way, there was a man that had been visiting her since day one, but I don't tell people that there's someone there until they get it themselves, because I like them to have the experience without any interference from me. So I need to get Daphne's energy, her vibration, high enough that she could make connection with this man. So she was starting to cry softly, and I asked her what was happening. And I knew Daphne didn't believe in spirits visiting or believe in spirits in that way, because I always ask my clients what their beliefs are before I work with them. And she said to me, "Marty's here." And that's her husband. "He's just standing here on my right side. And he's smiling at me and he's telling me what a good job I'm doing." And she was really emotional. She was able to connect and communicate with him for most of the session. It wasn't to the same intensity as the one I've shared with you, but he was still there. And when she came out of that session, the first time she'd connected with Marty, when she came out, she was filled with so much love and so much emotion. And she said that she felt so happy and so peaceful. And when she finished and she was leaving, she turned around and said to me, I did not know that was possible, Christine. I just did not know that could happen. That was amazing. So Marty visited Daphne many times during her sessions, but he was mainly present with her for most of them. He was just there. He was just standing there. He was just with her. But it gave her this incredible sense of calm and peace. And Daphne went on to be very savvy. She changed a lot of things in her life, and she changed a lot of things with the business and her family. And she was still her lovely, giving, caring self, but she was now strong and had clear and excellent boundaries with her family, with some of her friends, and with the business world. So she really found her voice and her way of life. And the main thing for her was that she knew that her beautiful Marty, as she used to call him, my beautiful Marty, he's always with me. She knew he was with her. So that was a really lovely, lovely group of sessions. I usually do 10 or more sessions with my clients. And sometimes they do maintenance work. It just depends where they're at. But my job in this instance is to get the client breathing in a way that we can get their vibration high enough to connect with the spirit person or the deceased loved one. And sometimes the deceased loved one is present, but the client's vibration isn't high enough to connect and receive them at that point. They don't know they're there. So this is where I work diligently with this energy to try and lift their frequency, the client's frequency, so that they can connect. So it's like the first time a person experiences a visit from a loved one like this, it's always the most powerful and the most affecting. The most important thing is that the client receives a sense of peace, a sense of ease, a sense of understanding, because there's always a new understanding that happens. But there is a spiritual law about how often and to what level the communication is allowed from spirit to the human being that is laying on the mattress. So after the initial visit, any sequential visits are usually less intense, but it's very comforting when the spirit is there with the person. Very, very comforting. So I don't know that we've got much time. I've got another one here that I want to talk to you about, Dr. Lee. Dr. Lee. She's a doctor of traditional Chinese medicine, but I don't think we're going to have time to go over that today. But I'm going to do a part 2 to life after death. So I will share that with you then. So what I might tell you is a quicker experience here of my own. So this is many years ago, I was in a change room, and sometimes a spirit comes through in the most odd and funny circumstances. So I was in a shopping centre years ago in a clothing shop, and I was trying on a pair of jeans, and the change rooms were like a row of cubicles, one after the other, in this jean shop. And I was changing into the jeans that I wanted to try on, and a female spirit appeared. And I thought, oh no, not here. And I was saying to her, go away, go away. But she wouldn't. And I know through experience that until the spirit is actually acknowledged, they will not leave. So, what a situation to be in. I knew this woman belonged to someone in the change rooms. I didn't know who or which one. So, how wacky was I going to look if I said anything? Anyway, she wouldn't leave. So, eventually, I yelled out loud enough for those in the change rooms to hear me. And I said, This is going to sound very strange, but I have a woman here that's passed over. She's showing herself to be in her 30s, and I described what the spirit was showing me. And I said, she belongs to someone here, and she wants me to tell you that she's well and happy. Someone you know needs to know this. She's telling me someone needs to know. And there was silence, absolute silence. And that silence felt eternal. And then there was a male voice, and he said, "You're describing my wife's sister." So I told the man she wants her sister to know that she's okay and she's happy where she is. And the spirit finally left me. So hopefully it brought some peace to the living sister. Life. It's been a journey for me too, speaking up and sharing these things. It's been challenging in my life, but it's got easier as I've got older, and it doesn't always happen. It just happens when it happens. So what do you believe? Is there life after death? I ask you. Now, I just want to mention my website, soulLifeConnection.com, SOULLIFE connection.com. I have a big sale on at the moment on all courses. And a lot of what's in my courses, all of them, is what I've been taught from these higher dimensions. So these teachings in the courses are what I used to understand myself and to heal myself and raise my own life. And they're really on ridiculous prices at the moment. So go on and have a look. My closing message today is that so many people dismiss their experiences. You know, they question if you have this experience of seeing somebody, or you might have a dream of a person, you might get a glimpse of them. During your waking day, you might feel them around you. You might have an experience that feels very real, and they dismiss it. Don't dismiss it. It's most likely very real. It can be your loved one, or it can be someone else's loved one coming through you. So they're important. That loved one's trying to get a message through. And as I mentioned, people often dismiss these occurrences and think, I just made it up. You didn't make it up. If you do have this type of experience, really honor that. And if it's about someone else's loved one, then tell them because they need to know. Try to be open to what that spirit's conveying to you. I want to say that spirit is always trying to convey something when it comes through. It can even just be, I'm here and I'm okay. But the relief and peace that it can bring to you or to other loved ones is enormous. It really is. So I will continue with part 2 on this. Thank you for tuning in to Higher Soul Living, where you'll ignite your divine intelligence for life with me, Reverend Christine Hart-Savage. Join me every second and fourth Thursday at 3 p.m. Pacific on Transformation Talk Radio for more information and stories that inspire hope, possibilities, and a greater understanding of who you are at a higher soul level. Together we deepen the connection between the spiritual and the physical aspects of your being and align to your soul's innate intelligence. Metaphysics and the higher soul's journey are my greatest joy. I invite you to join our Facebook community, Soul Life Connection Group, and to visit my website, SoulLifeConnection.com, for more information about me, my programs, my coaching, and to tap into your higher soul's intelligence. I hope to see you next time.